As we told you last night, the Senate, they passed more than a $50 billion package in aid for victims of Hurricane Sandy right here in our region. All told, D.C. is now pledged to provide almost all the money that Albany and Trenton were asking for. But even with the cash about to start coming in, there are still hundreds of reasons to be pretty ticked off about what D.C. did and didn't do. And Andrew, a lot of it has to do with timing.
Well, we'll start right there, Rich, with the timing. President Obama still hasn't been able to sign the bill. He will soon, but that means it's now 92 days since the storm hit, exactly 3 months to the day. Relief for Hurricane Katrina, in comparison, came in 10 days. Sandy, the longest delay in disaster aid in modern American history. And even that took lots of work. Remember the public shaming of House Speaker John Boehner on the floor of the House in the moments after Congress punted on the first Sandy aid bill back on New Year's Day? Had it not been for that and other comments, who knows if any aid would have been yet approved. But Congress did approve the money, only minus a key portion of Congress. 180 members of the House, including 179 Republicans, and 36 members of the Senate, all Republicans, voted no on Sandy relief. Their reason? Perhaps best summed up in words and actions by Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey, who blamed the deficit, bemoaning the cost of the $60 billion package, even though Toomey had requested aid for Pennsylvania even before Sandy hit. He still voted no, as did dozens of Republicans who had pushed for other disaster aid after disasters struck their home areas. Rich.
Now, you said the number, but do it one more time, Andrew. We talk about the magic number in the Senate lately having to be 60 because of all the filibusters that have now become par for the course. How close it was in the Senate and the House?
We had 62 yes votes in the Senate, 60 being the threshold by which you can defeat a filibuster. So, I mean, I think there were no votes on this because they knew this thing was going to pass. But still, you had a dangerously close number to the amount that would have blocked it, and 180 no votes in the House. I mean,
the majority of the Republican Party's elected officials in Washington are against Sandy aid, against immigration reform, against reform of the tax code if it raises revenue. With all due respect to the thoughtful, moderate voices that we bring on the show here, this is what I mean by bashing your head against the wall 8 times before you're dragged screaming into the 21st century. They did it on Sandy. They're going to do it on immigration. They're going to do it on reproductive freedom. And the fact of the matter is, until the Republican Party decides it will not be run by a crazy minority, this is going to happen all
Jessica,
the time.
Peter King, Grimm, I can list a whole bunch of Republicans, Chris Christie in Jersey. They screamed even worse bloody murder than a lot of Democrats at their own. They, I believe, shamed Boehner into coming back for the vote. But after all of that, can you give me any rationale why anybody thought, I know the whole deficit, please, okay? Come on! I mean, what is the
deficit? Oh, that old deficit, that nuisance.
Does anyone
of
think
the
this
deficit.
money is going to be wasted?
No, listen, I'm not.
This isn't about a pork barrel
I'm
project.
not
People have
defending.
lost their lives.
I am not defending the party on what they did with the Sandy.
Why did they
I think
do
it was
it? I don't get why they
unconscionable.
did it.
I think it was unconscionable, and I will not defend it. However, this is a very real problem that is going on in Washington right now, and I think it is born out of a complete frustration that no one is taking a serious look at the spending, and I'm not defending it on the Sandy aid, but in every other area of business in Washington, it is a fight, and no one has been serious about making spending cuts.
Begging your pardon, that's a little nonsensical, because the real issue here, while the deficit is being used as a cudgel on a lot of spending programs that Republicans don't like, the issue is across the board, as we've seen on issue after issue. It's, I can't sell this to my voters back home, and I'm subject to a primary challenge the next time I go back.
Because look at these bills. Look at the first Sandy bill. It was filled with a bunch of crap
that
never belonged in that bill to begin with.
What people want more than anything else. I think the Republican Party is really disconnected when it comes to immigration reform, as Richard said, when it comes to Sandy.
You got to break it down. There is plenty of connections with the Sandy bill. That first bill that came out, there were things in that bill that had no business being in there. So it gave them a reason to attack it.
But to be fair, what they actually took out when it was all said and done, I think added up to less than 1% of the total bill. Look at it. They approved almost the entire 60, 70 billion that they asked for. At the end of the day, What they stripped out was, I think, 500 grand or a couple million for some Bahamas, actually hurricane detection technology. Listen,
There was millions for Alaska fisheries,
but time
150
out.
million.
90 days
90
later.
days.
I am not
You were
defending
doing
that,
so
Richard.
well
I
when you
said-
said you weren't going to
listen,
defend it.
I'm
You should have
not.
kept
I
your
said from day one that and we said it on the show weeks ago, I said that this was a huge mistake for the party to do. But to act like this blindly had no issues from day one, or to lump in every other issue with the Republican Party is completely false.
But there is a constant theme here. We talk a lot about lawmakers and House Republicans or groups like the NRA or Grover Norquist and outside influences. It's all about convincing Republican voters, because the Republican mainstream voters have been feeding at the trough of Fox News and other sources where they're getting this position where everybody's
you think the
hardened
left
in the...
doesn't have the same
They
thing
do.
going
But you know,
on?
Tom, I got a
same
different
way.
question. Let's say the majority of the people who voted for this, I'll even give it the benefit of the doubt, voted against this on ideological reasons, don't agree. Now, I disagree with it, but okay. Do you think if the storm hit Texas,
You
hit
already know the
Arizona,
answer. You already know the answer.
hit red states
They're
here,
hypocrites.
that
I'm
this would
answering
have
it.
taken 90 days?
No, they're hypocrites. I'm taking it a step further, as my colleague Mr. Brodsky is smiling. They are pure, and I'm not talking about my colleague here, pure hypocrites.
Who are you talking about?
No, I'm talking about most of the Republicans in Congress. No, unless it's my district. Now, if it's my district, then it's different. Let's get all the emergency. We don't have to pay for it up front.
But you see, I think Peter King would have voted for aid if this was Texas. I
Yes.
think that.
Yeah,
I
he
think,
would have.
He
He
wasn't,
would have.
he wasn't one of the people Dominic's
Right.
talking about.
Right.
Look, but the heart of this, what unites all of this, is this question of who speaks for the Republican Party. It's a small tent, I'll give you that. And there are people there with different points of view, reasonable people, unreasonable people, like everywhere. But what's happened, and repeatedly, is that a nutty minority has been going out and defining the party, and if you don't hold the line, bam, you get a primary and you're out. That isn't chopped liver, and that's the real dynamic here. You can't
But you
defend
see,
it.
in your business, the Lee Atwaters of the world, and it's a different world, right? But they would have done the math, and they would have said, listen, let's see what we did. We tweaked the Latinos so much. At the end of the day, with the silliness, the self-deportation, all this talk, 71% of them voted for Obama, okay? And they didn't love him before, let's be honest. For 4 years, he didn't do anything on the issue of immigration, okay? But then on the flip side, who thinks this is good politics to make an entire region underwater wait 3 months? I know you don't, but I'm just saying it's bad politics. Forget about just bad
course
policy.
it is.
Somebody has to say, you know what, screw it. We're going to have this fight one way or the other with these primaries here. We're not afraid of Grover Norquist anymore.
I
Who's
agree.
afraid of him? Let's
Listen,
get this fight on the table.
And I don't disagree with what you're saying, is that I think a small minority of extremes on both sides is corrosive to the entire process.
it's not
It
both
is.
sides.
It is on
The
both
Republican
sides,
Party's
Richard.
been
It
captured.
absolutely
The Democratic
Do you think
Party has
anybody
not.
really listened to Dennis Kucinich at the end of the day when he was in there?
It doesn't matter.
He
You
could talk all he
have-
wanted about aliens, spaceships, whatever. They didn't listen to him.
But people listen to
You
Michelle
have your
Bachmann. They
own.
listen to
This
Marsha Blackburn.
This false equivalence is you know what? Keep it up, because it's a set of blinders that are going to keep the Republican Party on the downslide. I'm a Democrat. You know, you're right.
But you would think
Everything
they
you
would,
said
have
was right.
learned, they would have learned something from the past election. And there were some voices within the Republican Party that raised up and they said, we need change. This cannot continue
course.
the way it is. And I think those are the voices that have to be heard, because we want two very strong parties. We cannot have a very weak Republican Party,
Oh,
which
yes,
is
we
where
can.
we're going, and then a very strong. No, I think it's bad for the system in the
I agree
country.
with Marcel.
So I want the Republican Party to act together and learn from the past.
And I honestly thought, like, this is a perfect example. We're going to find this out with immigration reform, because I know what they want, you know what they want, right? Are they going to tell the folks who are going to be screaming about amnesty on Sunday morning, pipe down, all right? You're not going on the air. We're going to put X, Y, and Z to do the Sunday shows, not you.
Marco Rubio, he's been a perfectly mainstream
Yep.
voice in all of this, and it happens to be Hispanic. So what's wrong with that?
And we're gonna, and
He's been a sort of a not quite mainstream voice on one issue when there were 35 of them. And if you think you can redefine the party by a pretty face saying the right things on one issue, it
It's
won't
not.
work.
It's Marco Rubio. It's Ted Cruz. It's
You know what?
Susanna
I'm gonna
Martinez.
make it happen.
You guys
You know what I'm gonna make it
refuse
happen?
to.
Cory Booker. He's not your problem. He's the Democrats' problem. We're going to tell you why.
That's
He's got
fine.
a lot of problems after this one. Is Booker losing his edge? Nobody would have said this was not a media darling, but lately the press not so good. Is the sheen coming off the former Golden Boy? We're going to get into all that after this.